Hey everybody, welcome back to another Timeout with Tackle What's Next, where we chat with athletes and executives about how sport has made a difference and changed the course of their lives and the lessons that they've learned in life outside of the game. I am your host, Danielle Berman. I am the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, where we work to change the narrative around life after sports. So thank you guys for taking a time out with us here. I can't believe it. We've reached episode 40 of Time Out with Tackle What's Next, which is incredible. So thank you to everyone who has tuned in, been on the show, said yes, and really been a part of this incredible series. Tonight we are talking to Jonathan Jones. He is a best-selling author, a two-time TEDx speaker, and the host of Your Podcast Mentor with Jonathan Jones. He played basketball at Dallas College and at the University of Texas at Tyler, and he believes in helping individuals build their platforms so they can profit on purpose. I really love that. And he helps them profit on purpose through podcasting. He really strives to add value to each and every audience that he shares by making sure that they leave with tangible strategies for success. He has done all kinds of workshops. His podcast is fantastic. He's been featured on CBS News. He's spoken to over 100,000 students, ranging from elementary school to college. Some of his previous clients include the University of Texas, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt University, the University of Louisiana Monroe, and Baylor University. So I'm so excited to chat with Jonathan tonight because not only do I listen to Your Podcast Mentor and how to get paid with podcasting, I love all of the advice he gives, but Jonathan has been a huge proponent of us here at Tackle What's Next. He's spoken at a number of our events, and he has really been a great support system, always willing to share advice and feedback with any athletes from our team, any athletes in our community that are just excited about building their brands and growing. So really, really pumped to have Jonathan join us here tonight. I'm going to bring him on screen here. We will get started. And again, thank you all for tuning in, being a part of episode 40 of Time Out. Hello, Jonathan. How's it going?
Oh my goodness. Life it's funny when life just happens. Like it happens. Like it happens. So here we are.
Hopefully all is well, and we're glad to have you here tonight and join us. So thanks for being here. Thanks for taking some time with us.
Definitely. Thank you. Excited about everything that that you've been doing. Tackle What's Next. You all are definitely leading the forefront just in making sure that not only athletes but leaders are ready to tackle what's next. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity.
Well, I very much appreciate that. So kind of you to say. And I want to hear what's going on with you. We were talking in our intro about your podcast mentor. You are talking to like 100,000 students, right, about podcasting. So how's things been going? What's the latest update? What are you guys up to now? Where can people, kind of learn more? Tell us a little bit more about what this whole podcasting thing is about.
Yeah. So, I mean, with podcasting, I really believe that. Here we go. We'll be right here. Yeah, a little bit more light. So just with podcasting and just with the way everything is going in the industry, I want more student athletes to start podcasts. I want more student athletes to start podcasts because not only does it help them cultivate their identity, but even outside of that, it helps them to explore their interests. It helps them build networks and build relationships. So, really been wanting to teach more student athletes, more leaders just across the world why they need to start podcasts, and also before the industry really blows up, because by 2028, it's projected to be $100 billion industry. So
wow.
I want to get more people in before that time.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And I want to talk about your own sports experience because you also were a student athlete. So start us from the beginning. What was the first sport you played? How did you end up in basketball? Tell us a little bit about that.
First sport I played was actually t-ball, and I was terrible. I never could hit the ball off the tee. I always would hit the tee. It was just a struggle. But I wanted to play baseball because my brother was playing baseball. So that was one area for me where I wanted to be better than I was. And then eventually, as I grew and stretched out a little bit more, then basketball then began to be the place for me. And I never actually was that great of a basketball player, believe it or not. I was the guy who just hustled really hard. High school, I was on the JV team because our varsity team was #1 in the nation, according to USA Today at one point. So varsity was a dream that never happened. And then I ended up going on. Then ended up going to Richland Junior College, Division III junior college, and I was the manager. So didn't get the opportunity to be on the team until it was a year or 2 years later. And then from there, finished off at the University of Texas at Tyler. But just going through all that, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about just being patient. I learned a lot about, the closer you stay to the game, the closer you stay to the team, then you're able to not only realize what the need is, but you're able to serve and lead in a different way. So, in a nutshell, that's like my basketball experience because, it was enjoyable, but at the same time, it was full of life lessons, without a doubt.
Well, that's great because that was actually one of my questions is what was some of the impact that playing sports, specifically basketball, had in your life? And so you just shared one of them, but is there anything else that you feel like, sports in general, whether it was t-ball and the struggle to hit the ball off the tee, or whether it was basketball and really working for that spot, like tell us a little bit about what impact that playing sports in general has had on who you are today.
Yeah, playing sports has taught me persistence because I never really realized it, but when you're an athlete, you want to get better in your specific, so for me, it was, I need to get better at dribbling my left hand. I need to get better at laying up the ball with my left hand. So one thing I began to learn was if I wanted to get better at that specific area, that specific thing, I had to do it over and over and over again. So now looking at that in entrepreneurship, if I'm not pleased with how I'm performing, then I need to go back and I need to make the tweaks on episodes, or I need to make the tweaks on presentations until I get to the place where I'm like, okay, I've improved here. Now let me move on to a different area. So persistence is definitely one of the things that that sports has taught me. In addition to knowing your role on the team, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people may want to be like the #1, but they may be better suited to be the #2 or the #3. And we don't talk about it that often. But I heard this yesterday on a podcast with my friend Nikki Saunders, and she was just saying, you can be all right as as a #2 or #3, just in the top 10. You can be fine there, and you can still be a greater compliment, and you won't have the X on your back like if you're #1. So just knowing what your role is. And then as you identify your role, they're really just playing and maxing out, the #3 spot, the #2 spot. So those would be some of the things that sports have taught me, without a doubt.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you mentioned like entrepreneurship and you kind of use that persistence in terms of working on what you're building now. Are there any other skills that sport has taught you besides persistence that you feel like show up for you all the time in the work that you're doing today?
Wow, what else has sports taught me? Okay, persistence, like I said, own your role. In addition to that, I would have to say, like, take a gamble on yourself, right? Because sports sometimes we may or may not gamble on ourselves, right? Because I remember a time I was in the locker room and we were down a lot at halftime, and the coach was like, "They're killing y'all in the post. They're killing y'all in the post. I wish I had a guy out here who I can put in there and who would handle up on the post." And I always think back to that because I should have told him, "Coach, put me in. But I mean, I wasn't confident enough in my skills at that time, so therefore I didn't say it. But I think we shortchange ourselves when we don't think, like when we don't take a chance and bet on ourselves. And then also, I just throw in a bonus, Danielle, because you got me going. You have to really not just dream big, but think big, and then put in big work. And I'm saying that because typically, if you played on a sports team at the beginning of the season, nobody says we want to go 0-12. We want to go 0-14 this season, right? You start off saying, well, we want to win the championship.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't we try to win the championship in our respective industries and our respective fields in, our respective careers? So therefore, like, think as big as you possibly can to where you're uncomfortable, and then think a little bit bigger than that. Because at the end of the day, you never get to the level that you always were striving towards. Sometimes you might fall a little bit below. I take that back. Not you never get to the level, but more than likely, people strive for a level and they hit like just below what they were striving towards.
Totally.
So if we strive higher, then we're more likely to even supersede our own expectations. So
right.
That's some other ones I say.
I mean, what's that saying? Shoot for the moon and you'll land among the stars. Like that's what it is, right? It's about the main goal, and like success is where you land on that pipeline, right? So I love that. And I want to talk about how you got into the work you're doing today. So let's start with your basketball career. How did you transition out of that career? How did that career end for you? What was that like? Were there resources that you wish you would have had, or maybe things that you felt like were really helpful? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
So Danielle, I'm not proud to say this, but my basketball career ended with me being not washed up, but I was like right to that point, because it ended with me kicking a chair and it ended with me kicking a ball in a game. And then after I self-assessed, and I was like, you know what? It might be time for me to walk away from the game. And this is when I was playing like small semi-pro team in Dallas. And I was like, yeah, I need to do something different. Were there resources I wish I had? Yeah, I wish I had resources that would have helped me further cultivate some passions. I wish I would have had resources that helped me really hone in my identity, truly separated from the game of basketball, right? Even though I said I wasn't the best player, because I wasn't, but at the same time, if there was something that helped me identify, well, John, you're strong at this, you're strong at speaking, you're strong at storytelling, like whatever it might be, then I think those things would have really set me up. So the transition for me looked like, I'm at this time when I quit playing basketball, I was doing inventories, like going in stores late at night, counting the items, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So doing this, then it got to the point to where I met up with an old teammate of mine. He was like, John, man, I'm about to start speaking, and I'm about to start going to these schools and speaking, and I have this coach. I think you should meet him, right? So I met my friend at the Waffle House. He met up with me because he bought one of my books, and he was like, you should meet my coach. And I was like, okay. Needless to say, later on, I realized that this was going to be the shift, like, for my life, because I met this coach. He started just sharing with me how I can take my experience, and then ultimately from taking my experience, how I can leverage that to start speaking. So was speaking at colleges, universities for about 4 years, right? Doing this, for about 4 years. And then once the pandemic happened, that was when things took a real shift, Danielle, because a school paid me, and they're like, Jonathan, you know what? The pandemic happened, so we're actually gonna need the check back.
Wow.
Because you haven't spoke yet, but we're gonna need the check back. And I was like, no, but I already spent that.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
the money was already gone.
100%.
Yeah, the money was gone. The money, you put it in the account, separated up, bills here, this, there. So when that happened, I was like, I need to do something really, really, really fast. So I started thinking, looking at my previous experience with basketball, looking at my previous experience as an athlete, and then saying, I know how to speak and communicate with an audience. Now I want to speak with student athletes, because student athletes are going to continue to be on campus. The general body isn't going to always be on campus because of the pandemic, they're at home. Student athletes, a lot of, at some campuses, some people won't tell you this, but at some campuses, some student athletes were there the whole time, through the whole pandemic and all of that. So then that was when I started doing the work I was doing with student athletes and sharing with them my story, cultivating the identity, just navigating around this massive just identity foreclosure thing. And so now that really kind of leads us up to where we are today, for the most part.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think it's so important that you, back to the earlier part of your story, like had that kind of moment with yourself where you're like, you know what, I think this is time to move on from basketball. I don't like what I'm doing right now, and I don't like how I'm interacting with this. And I think it's really awesome that you saw that and were able to kind of course correct and say, nope, I think it's time, right? It's time to move on. Because that's a hard decision. Like, that's just not something you make very lightly. This is like a huge part of who you are. So I appreciate you kind of talking about that. And I want to know, you talked about that connection with your teammate and that coach. Like, how important was that relationship? I know you said that kind of changed the game for you, but how can other people find those kinds of relationships? Like, what should athletes be looking for when it comes to like, okay, I need help, or I need somebody that can guide me? Like, do I Google search? Like, is it connections? Like, tell us a little bit about like how you recommend folks like find those relationships, or how people find you.
Yeah, so one area to start, and this is like let's say, this person is in a spot where like, I don't know it, like we're square one. I would say get a piece of paper, and then I would say write down like, what are 3 areas that you're currently passionate about or interested in, right? 1, 2, 3, 3 areas. I might want to know more about this. I think there's more information, like 3 areas, right? And this could be general, it could be vague.
Sure.
And then after that, like, let's just take a little bit of time. Let's do a little bit of, not heavy research, but let's just do a little bit of research. And by way of us starting to do a little bit of research, now we're going to start to learn more about the industry, more about the field. And then the next step, this would be the third step, this would be like the final step. Then find other people, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on Instagram, search the keywords from the original interest that you wrote down. And by way of you doing this, now you're in a spot, in a position to where you can begin to connect with these people, and then you can do informational interviews. I, of course, would recommend you doing it by way of a podcast, because that way it's recorded, and that's where you still have that information to refer back to. But when you begin to do these informational interviews, now you're learning about their journey, and then you can determine, okay, I want to learn more about this specific area or this specific industry, or I don't, so we can cancel. So let's say we have 3 ideas. We cancel out 2 after having conversations with people, but we have 1 that we like. Then we can either move forward with that 1, or we can even fill in the 2 gaps and say, okay, let's try something else. Let's try something else in these 2 other spaces. So that would be where I would say start if you don't have any resources, don't have anyone. The second way I would say, if you're currently an athlete competing somewhere, take a look and assess who's connected to you right now. Like, am I connected with counselors? Am I connected with coaches? And then as you start to look at these people, still write down those passions, but then start to ask them, like, what would you recommend that I do about this? How would you suggest that I proceed forward? Because when you ask these people who are connected to you, they know you better than a lot of other people. So they can actually speak into where you are and where you desire to go. So that would be like just some tips right there to get started. So that's what I say to get started, Danielle.
No, it's great. I think I love the like really simplifying it down to like just pick 3 things, find 3 ways that you can really come up with an idea around, okay, what am I interested in? And then explore those from there. I really think that's a great method and a great way to do that. And I also love the idea about asking people around you. Like, everyone has insights, everyone has networks, everyone has people that you can kind of come together with. And people know other folks and can connect you and build relationships. So I was just saying, I think at the end of the day, your advice is great because it's simple and it really helps people kind of say, okay, I can do that, right? I got that. This is doable. Break it down. It's not overwhelming. But I love the advice of finding those folks in your network already and talking to them to be like, hey, I'm really interested in this, because you don't know who they know. They might be like, oh, you're interested in this field? I know somebody that's the CEO of a company. Let me connect you. It's that simple. So I think that's great advice and a great place to get started. And I think for you talked about podcasting and how you recommend them. I want to know, around the conversations you have. So I know most of your podcasting is around encouraging others to start podcasts and telling people about the podcasting industry, but you also do a lot of interviews. So I'd love to hear, what conversations stand out to you the most. Is there something kind of theme that you feel like comes up in a lot of your episodes that you really love, but just what's it like to be in the world of podcasting, talking about podcasting?
Yeah. So excellent question. Thank you for asking. So in terms of interviewing, or in terms of being a podcast host, one one major cheat code that I'd say is the fact that you get time that a lot of other people may have to pay for, right? So you can interview people who might have a high level of influence. So a lot of people are trying to get to them, trying to talk to them. But by you being the host, now you get the opportunity to ask questions. You can selfishly ask questions that would benefit you. So that's one great benefit. But for me, what the conversations I love having is like asking questions that nobody else has asked them before, because I like to go in and do research before. So I like asking questions that other people haven't asked before, or if they have asked, then we're going in and we're building off of an answer that they already put out there. So I enjoy having those conversations, but I also enjoy having the opportunity to connect with people, because Danielle, this is something that people may miss as well. If you interview somebody, right? Somebody, and I'll just say somebody who's a leader, because, you know, that can mean many different things. And I want it to be general and vague on purpose. But you now have a special place in this person's life, because a lot of people do not interview day-to-day heroes who are out here doing whatever career field. So now you have an opportunity to follow up with them, say, hey, do you mind if I shoot your email after the conversation goes live and everything like that? They'll say, fine. Then you just continue to keep the conversation going. And then before the interview, like before you push record, and then after when you push stop, those are also two moments where you get to ask these people questions to where you can figure out what their need is and how you can be a resource for them. And then ultimately this will help you further in your career as well. So that's a little bit what I love about podcasting.
I love that. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy is meeting people, being able to connect with people. And then at the same time, like you said, being able to learn from them, right? Like I'm learning from you right now by talking to you and being able to listen to the incredible answers you're giving me. But I love the follow-up piece, because I think people don't do it enough, is like actually stay in touch with people. Is like when people say like, oh, keep in touch. Like if you actually do it, you're standing out among like the 80% of people that don't ever reach back out. So just simply by sending that email, like you said, like a month later, like, hey, just thought of you, wanted to see how you're doing, like just checking in, like they're gonna be like, whoa, that's cool. She or he remembers me, like amazing, that's fantastic. Loved being on your podcast, right? Like glad things are well. So I love that advice, because I think building relationships takes a lot of time, but it doesn't necessarily have to be rocket science. It's just about being genuinely interested, like you said, asking good questions, and actually keeping in touch, just actually checking in every once in a while, like how are things, making time for a phone call if that makes sense, or just an email. So I love that. And I think podcasting is a great way to share stories and, like you said, capture information not only for you, but for other people. You can provide value by saying, you'll want to know what Jonathan told me on Timeout, so you better tune in. And then people are like, well, I can't wait to see who else is coming on this show that I can learn from, right? So I love it. And I'm excited to hear that, you guys are continuing to build this out and that podcasting is doing so well. It sounds like we're about to get even bigger and better in the podcasting space, lots more investment and money going in. So as we wrap up, Jonathan, I have a couple more questions for you. One is about advice to other people, right? You aim to use your life experiences to influence people and have young professionals and emerging leaders embrace this holistic development. So I want to know, this is kind of an impact that you make on other people's lives. What advice do you have for people, whether they're athletes or not, who really want to make an impact in their own way? Maybe it's starting a podcast. Maybe it's just kind of being able to make a difference in a certain way. You talked about building relationships and where you can start there, or kind of figuring out what you want to do. But what if you kind of know what you want to do, but you don't know how to start? Like how do you start? How do you start your podcast mentor? How do you actually like get the ball rolling and building that impact project?
Yeah. Excellent question and amazing recap, Danielle. That was amazing. that was amazing. But just in terms of getting started, I would say that because you said you already know what you want to do. I would say, okay, no. Okay, this is what I'm gonna say. More than likely, the thing that you're running from is the thing that you should be doing anyway. So a lot of us attempt to do things that we say we quote unquote want to do it, and we might want to do it because it seems easier. I'm not going to say take the path of the least resistance, but I will say take the path in the area that you're most gifted in. Right? So if you know that you're a gifted connector of people, then take a step back and then see who needs that, who would benefit from that the most. People who are introverts. And if you know that you connect people really well, maybe you need to seek out some introvert groups or something like that. And this is a random example, but think about what your gift is, see who you can solve that problem for. And then from that point, that's where impact comes. And then where impact comes, income will follow shortly thereafter. And I'm saying shortly, that can be whatever time limit. But a lot of times we know we're talented at something, but then we go try to solve another problem. No, your talent is a key right here to a problem right now. So use that talent, solve that problem, create that impact, and then get to the income.
I love that. I think it's so important because I also agree that there's a lot of things that you're like, oh, but I can't do that. Like, that's not possible, but it is. And so I love that you're saying, like, don't listen to that voice in your head that says, like, not a good idea, back away, and just pick the path that's like what everybody else does or like what people are telling you to do. Really listen to that voice in your head that's saying, like, go ahead. I see you're about to cut me off. Go ahead.
No. I wasn't going to cut you off. I was going to wait till you're finished. I was just trying to do the nice.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying you wanted to add something. No, but I think like really what you're saying is like, don't let other people or society or like what you're supposed to do, like change your trajectory. If you know that this is something you care about and something you're good at, which I think is really important. If you can understand your strengths and use those strengths, that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And so I think like in terms of what you just said, I think where you start is like really think about the big scary things that you're like, okay, I really want to do that, but I don't know if I can. All right, well, let's dive into that a little bit, right? Let's see how can we do that and where do my strengths plug in, right? So I love that example. Go ahead.
Here's the part, Danielle. Here's the part. Don't quit and don't stop. And I'm about to expound on it a little bit more. So for me, I've reached out to multiple schools over the past 2 years, telling them, I would love to come in. I would love to show your student athletes how to start podcasts. I would love to come in. Some people said no. Some people are like, Jonathan, our students aren't entrepreneurial. Some people have said, Jonathan, our students aren't mass communications majors. Jonathan, I don't think that's the program right now. These people have kept telling me this, right? Different schools across the country, as we're watching student athletes start podcasts with certain groups and different things like that. And it's interesting to me that I didn't stop, but I started a podcast about podcasting. But here's the part. We need to identify the gift. And once we identify the gift, we take the problem, right? The problem that is the lock. So we put the key into the problem. But with the problem, we have to drill down all the way to the core. So we go an inch forward and we literally go a mile deep. Danielle, now I'm at the point to where if anybody tried to give me any reason why a student athlete if anybody comes to me and says, Jonathan, I shouldn't have a podcast, and I ask them, what goal do you want to accomplish in your life? And they tell me the goal, I'll be able to connect why they should have a podcast to that. Because I've done research, I've done episodes, I do podcast how-tos, and that's what people need to be able to do. If you really want to do what you say you want to do, then you need to take time and really hone in on what the gift is, what the thing is. And then from that point, begin to figure out all the different ways you can use this thing, right? Yeah. If somebody tells you no, ask them, well, why is it that you're telling me no? They'll give you some feedback and you say, okay, I'll take that feedback. And then you go back to the drawing board and then you come up with a solution to cancel that out next time.
Totally.
Because when we stop, we lose. So we have to keep drilling down, have to keep going and master our gift. Because I haven't mastered my gift. I've learned a lot about it, but my work is not done.
Yeah.
I'm off my soapbox, Danielle. I'm done.
No,
I'm done.
I love it. I was right there with you. I was with you the whole time because I think it is really important. People get discouraged when they hear no, naturally. Of course you do. But to your point, that just is not necessarily a never. It means not right now, or you haven't given me the problem solver that I need yet. So I love that back to the drawing board. It's about going back, kind of saying, what did I miss? What am I doing? Right? All of those things. So I think it's really, really awesome that that's the advice that you have, because don't quit, keep going. Also continue to build. Like, just because you've started and you get that first client doesn't mean you're like, done, did it, I'm like set, just gonna work here. Like, keep learning. And so I love that you are constantly consuming podcasts, constantly doing research, because that will help you continue to master your trade. And people will eventually be like, well, there's no one, and they're probably still at this point, they're still saying this, there's no one that knows more about podcasting than Jonathan Jones. And that's the goal, right? You want to be that person. And so I really appreciate that. And as we close out, I want you to tell us a little bit about what's coming up for your podcast mentor, some of the work you're doing. Where can people follow, listen, subscribe, give us all of the good. So if people want to get on their podcasting game, where do they find you, and where do they listen?
Gotcha. So if somebody out here is wanting to get on their podcasting game, well, in the link in my bio, I have a link to where you can get a free copy of my book, where it walks you through everything, how to start a podcast, manage, monetize. All that is in the book. I just asked that I cover the cost of the book. I just asked that you cover the cost of shipping. So that link's in my bio. What's coming up? We actually have the Athletes Unite conference coming up in Atlanta, and it's going to be July 15th and 16th. And we're almost sold out of tickets. And right now we have we have a promo code for the tickets. So if you DM me the word promo, I will send you the information so you can type in the code and you can get tickets to that conference. Shout out to Classy James and the Shakeout LLC family. They've done a great job putting that together. And we launched the Athletes Unite Conference podcast.
Yes.
So, that's been cool. But that's really what's coming up right now. And of course, I'm going to continue to do, everything podcasting. I'm going to continue to, talk about the latest in podcast news. But that is really all for me. Danielle, one thing I want to say before though, your podcast mentor show is the title of my show, and the tag is in the bio as well. So you can tag and, you can follow and connect with my podcast page. But Danielle, you said earlier the thing about staying connected with people, and you have done a great job of that. I have seen you do that in action, because after we talked, I was like, I was going to send her an email, but you emailed me, and that's why you have a robust network of relationships, because you really do stay in contact with people, and what you're doing with Tackle What's Next and creating resources and creating content. So thank you.
So kind of you. So kind of you. I am a follow-upper. So if I talk to you, I will be reaching out to say thank you if you don't beat me to the punch within a couple days. And I also do the whole hey, it's been a while, come back to me and just come tell me how you're doing. So I love it. And I think it's just because I love people and I love connecting and hearing how people are doing. So Jonathan, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show, for all the work you're doing. We will make sure all of this is in the show notes for this show. When we share it out, we'll be making this into our podcast as well. So we'll be putting all that info in there, as well as the link to your podcast mentors. People can tune in. Be sure to follow Jonathan if you haven't already. Send him the promo code for the Athletes United Summit. Let's get people there. And Jonathan, thanks again for all your support of what we're doing at Tackle What's Next. Really, really appreciate your time tonight. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Excellent. Thank you, Danielle. And I'll see you soon.
Yes, sounds great. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And Jonathan, thanks again. Good night.
Good night.